Well, I'm very optimistic about where the world will be 50 years from now. I hope I'm around to see it, but I think we can already see the shape of things in some ways. The human population, which was growing at a very rapid rate, is now growing at a slower rate because as we become successful, families have chosen to have less children. And so we can see a peak population that makes it possible to think about living within the resource constraints that we have. We can also see a decline in violence. It's amazing now because we hear about all the violent things around the world, but every century the world has had a lot less war, a lot less violent deaths, and we've come to value the work that's being done but in other countries, making great products, and really think together about humanity's common future. The pace of innovation will need to surprise us in some ways. What form this great energy source will be that will avoid us destroying the environment. That's an invention that's very, very important. How much care will we give towards making sure that the poorest several billion are not completely left out? There's been a little bit of progress there, but the inequity level still should concern us quite a bit. And then there are things that are harder to predict. For example, how important will robots be in 50 years? Maybe 20 years ago, people, when they first heard about robots, thought, wow, that's pretty scary. What does it mean? But then when it didn't really happen, they stopped thinking about it. It's almost like only a curiosity in the movies or toys, and yet clearly in the decades ahead, the cost, the capabilities will mimic what we've seen in science fiction. And so we'll have to see, how do we take advantage of that? As we're living longer, how do we find fulfillment? What does a working career look like in terms of timing? The world will have aged on average, and that brings with it very interesting problems. And so it's not without challenges, but the path of extended lifespan, more science, more global understanding, sense of our common humanity, more education, more ability to watch a great course and not give up the curiosity that you're born with, but try to think about the world and where it can go and how you can contribute to it. I think all of these things are taking more advantage of our innate capabilities and will allow us to make 50 years from now a far better place than even what we have today. But if your talents take you towards science or programming, advances in biology or energy breakthroughs, those kind of deep areas are going to be the biggest source of change. We need better tools to deal with all these diseases worldwide. Governments are having problems meeting all the needs out there, partly because health costs are exploding. And the only solution to that I see is innovation. So we need so many skills. People are willing to go out in the field and do the work. People who work with patients directly. Yeah, the vision of mobile phones and tablets and the magic software that was needed for those things, Microsoft really had that clearly in view. Now we let, in some aspects, others execute a little better than we did. Still very serious about those areas and incredible technical depth. The next 15 years, these devices are going to get so much better. And instead of thinking about it as, okay, I have this device, I install this application on it, you'll think of all the devices working together to help you. And the information will, through the cloud, just magically show up. If you're partly editing something, you go even pick up someone else's device, but authenticate who you are, that will be there with all of the state, your photos, your calendar, and those things. So it'll be far more multi-device, far more natural interface, Speech is getting really very good. Handwriting recognition is very good. The idea that it remembers where you went, so if you want to remember something, it'll know what you browsed, what you looked at. So it'll be this personal agent that's very, very powerful. Microsoft's even shown recently what they call HoloLens, which are glasses that are annotating, putting information up, even if it's not really there on the wall, or reminding you who's coming and what sort of background information you might want to have about them. So the pace of innovation, I'd say, is as fast today as it's ever been in that space.
Well, in the even 10 to 20 year time frame, artificial intelligence is going to be extremely helpful, and the risk that it gets super smart, that's way out in the future, and probably worth talking about. But now what we're seeing is that for the first time, computers can see as well as humans. That's pretty incredible. If you combine that with the ability to have arm-like manipulation, then they can make us far more productive, but then the job market has to adjust to that. Google, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft are all moving ahead at a great speed in improving this artificial intelligence software. So it's very exciting, and the speed is faster than it was 5 years ago.
Where would be the one area that you think stands to have the most promise for this? I mean, are you thinking the productivity in the labor force like you thought? Are you thinking driverless cars? Are you thinking advances in health and technology, or in health and science? Where would you think the real promise lies?
Well, one area is what we call agents, where if you're seeking knowledge, you can talk in natural language to an expert agent, and it will do as well as a human would giving you information. A specific example of that is have the software help you figure out what's important. Today we're kind of slaves to our computer, where we have to decide to go to email or Twitter or text, and we're the one weighing which might be more important. Software is going to solve that, where it'll look at all the new information and present to you, knowing about your interests, what would be most valuable. So making us more efficient, what I call the alter ego software, will be a huge help.
What is the next disaster? What is the one that we're not prepared for?
Well, I'd point out two. One is climate change. Every year that would be a death toll even greater than we've had in this pandemic. Also related to pandemics is something people don't like to talk about much, which is bioterrorism, that somebody who wants to cause damage could engineer a virus. And so that means the cost, the chance of running into this is more than just the naturally caused epidemics like the current one.
It feels to me like there's something similar about pandemics and climate change, or like asteroid impact, which is that they're not very tangible, but you could do a little bit. I don't know, it seems like humans are not very good at those sorts of problems.
Well, my favorite writer, Václav Smil, wrote about all the potential kinds of disasters, like the risk of an asteroid, the risk of a Yellowstone-like eruption. And in fact, he showed that pandemics were significantly the biggest thing, other than a human-caused nuclear war, that we needed to be more prepared for.
So what changes do we put in place to be readier for the next one? And is it possible that COVID-19 could be the last global pandemic?
Well, certainly there will be more pandemics. In ways that humans interact with other species, these viruses are coming across a species barrier, whether it's from bats or monkeys or...
But you don't think we could increase our preparedness to such a level that it never sort of becomes this global issue?
We could increase our preparedness so we never have a death toll anywhere near what we have today. Pandemics can be worse in terms of the fatality. Smallpox was over 30% fatality. So a little bit we were lucky that the fatality here is not super high, but we can nip it in the bud. It'll still get to a lot of countries, but the number of deaths, with the right system should be 1/10 of what we've seen here.
And the systems that you want to put in place, so you can nip it in the bud, or sort of what are the key elements that we didn't have that we should have going forward?
I would divide it into two sections. There's the field-based activity and the R&D activity. In R&D, we need to mature mRNA so we can make it even faster and have factories all over the world, have it be cheap and thermostable. There's a lot that can go into therapeutics, including antibodies. On diagnostics, having the ability to give 10 million PCR tests a day. Then in terms of the field, we need a lot of diagnostic machines all over the world. We need a team of epidemiologists. So the investments are about equal between R&D and the field-based group and information that should be constantly flowing.